Welcome, everyone, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I am joined this week by a special guest, Kenney Gardner, over there from Artisan Cabinetry and Millwork. Kenny, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely.
It's going to be an awesome episode. We're excited to have you. You're like kind of our next door neighbors. We use and take up most of your parking lot for our parking.
Yeah.
And we get to work with you guys quite a bit. In fact, we were just talking before we started recording that our videographer here, Tanner Simpson, has filmed a bunch of videos over there. We've done some for clients and all sorts of stuff. And so, we have a good relationship with you guys and love working with you. So, Kenny, excited to have you on for a lot of different reasons. But first and foremost, I want to get you kind of familiar with our audience a little bit.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about your background. Who is Kenney Gardner? Who's Kenny G?
Kenney G is born in Texas, but lived in Blackfoot my whole life.
Okay, cool.
So 36 years in Idaho, basically.
Cool.
Grew up here, raising my own family now.
Awesome.
And now, doing the cabinet thing. So
what brought you from Texas to Idaho?
That's my parents' choice. Yeah, I have no
They're
idea.
like, let's get out of Texas.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So lived here basically your whole life.
Yep.
What did you start doing coming out of high school? Did you go to college? What was all entailed?
I didn't do college. So I guess the dream was when I was in high school, Dad owned his own. He was a general contractor.
Cool.
So that was my dream. Is I'm just going to follow in those steps. Well, things changed like they always do.
Yeah.
And I ended up actually. So I guess back up in high school. That's where I learned carpentry. Started as soon as I could drive and actually get myself to the job sites. That's where I started.
Yeah.
Started as a framer and then became a trim carpenter. And then in high school is when I started right up into those cabinet making classes. Sorry. Couldn't think of it. Took that every year I could. And then like I say, things changed after high school. I graduated, worked in construction for about a year, and then construction industry went down, in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
So just started looking for other options and actually ended up out at the site. So worked out there for a little over a decade, and then in the background still kept my, I guess, skills up as a carpenter, being a trim carpenter, still building cabinets for people. And now we're doing it full time. So that's
so cool.
That's the short story.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna piece it up here, I think, a little bit and talk a little bit about it. But for those that we've talked a little bit about it with Kenyon Martin, who's a good friend of the podcast. He's been on, I think, like 3 or 4 times. He talked about he also worked out at the site, which is like a government facility here locally. It's where a lot of our people in Blackfoot, I would say, it's one of the largest employers of people that work here in Blackfoot, and maybe just Southeast Idaho in general. A lot of people work out there. It's a great job, or great jobs out there, I should say. There's thousands of people that work out there, so there's a lot of really awesome jobs. Kenyon, kind of a similar story, was kind of in the same boat as you and was like kind of starting this business on the side and got to a point you kind of had to make the choice between this really stable, awesome job working for the government and kind of diving in and starting his own business. So I'd love to kind of get your perspective on that a little bit, and what prompted you to kind of make that leap? Was it like a final decision? I mean, obviously it came down to a final decision one day, but was it like a slow buildup? What was it for you that kind of helped you make that jump into being a business owner?
So I guess to go back to when I first started the site, within a couple of years I could tell that wasn't me. That wasn't what I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Nothing against it. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. So basically since then, I'd always been scheming in my mind of what am I going to do? Yeah. I'm not going to live this out for the next 40 years. I just don't see myself doing it. Yeah. So it's always been in the back of my head is I've got to figure out what I'm going to do. So that's why I still kept construction in the background, because I always thought it would be back into that somehow. Didn't know exactly what it was. My dream, honestly, has always been to own a cabinet shop. Ever since high school, that has been what I wanted to do. Why? I don't know. But that's just, I'm fascinated by it. I love doing it. Yeah. My parents actually told me when I started doing this shop now that they said if they ever were to play and win the lottery, what they would do for me is buy me a cabinet shop. And that was before I told them even that I was starting the shop. They didn't know about it. We were already in the makings. We had stuff showing up, equipment showing up, and then my parents were told about it, and they said that's what they would have done for me anyways.
That's awesome.
Obviously it didn't go the lottery route, right? So yeah, in the little over a decade out at the site, just trying to figure out a way of what am I going to do? And then this opportunity, the cards just kind of all aligned. Like there was talk about it for a little bit, and then it kind of just fell off. And then all of a sudden, one phone call, and we were hot and heavy into it. There was no turning back at that point.
Yeah.
And so we committed. We did everything we needed to do, and like I said, how it all aligned, I don't know.
But it
it did. It aligned, and we decided this is it. This is what we're doing.
That's so cool, man.
Scary. Very scary, because like I said, I left a very stable, very good job.
Yeah.
To now whatever happens is up to me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of scary to know. There's no one to catch me when I fall.
Yeah.
So
super relatable in a lot of ways to a lot of business owners. I think like large and small doesn't matter. Like everybody kind of gets to a point where it's like, okay, how do I decide to like dive into this?
Right.
Or how does that happen? And you're married, right, Kenny?
Yeah. Yep.
So I'd love to interview your wife someday too, because I feel like there's a lot of conversations that happen with you and your spouse about
absolutely.
like, hey, I'm thinking about leaving this place that I've enjoyed working at for the last 10 years to kind of pursue something that's my dream. How did those conversations go? How did that support happen? Because she's obviously continued to support you. So like, what was it like having those initial conversations with her?
Obviously fear, right?
Yeah.
Because we have our children that we got to take care of. And now, she stays at home with them. She raises them.
Yep.
So it's all up to me. So if I leave that, we're terrified of what's going to happen. So the conversations were nerving, but she knew. She's like, as soon as we started talking about it, it was like, yeah, that's what we're going to do. How? Cool. We don't know, but we're going to do it. So
that's so awesome.
Yeah.
It's great. The support system aspect is always so cool to me to hear about, because I think it's something that's glossed over a little bit in a lot of cases for a lot of business owners that are like, oh yeah, I just went out on my own and I did this thing and it was awesome. And yes, that's probably true in a lot of aspects, but I think there's at times like great support systems behind it. Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your kids, whatever. But there's always like a support system in some way, shape, or form that's like, yeah, go do this thing.
Yeah.
And I love that, man. I think like that's something that should be talked about a little
absolutely.
bit more.
I mean, and it's been hard on her, especially for the last year since we've started this, I'm gone. There's nights I've worked well past midnight just trying to get jobs done, because we're trying to get, our feet underneath us those first few months. And it was just, you just have to do it. So it was hard on her, but obviously still supporting.
That's cool, man.
So
let's, I want to go back a little bit too, because you said something that I want to see if we can dissect a little bit, because I'm just curious about it. And maybe there isn't an answer, but I'm curious about it a little bit. You just kind of fell in love with cabinetry, and you can probably trace it back to that high school class.
Yeah.
Was there something in particular that you just really liked? Was it the equipment? Was it the maybe you just had an awesome teacher? Like, what was it that kind of really like, man, this is something I could like fall in love with?
So hands down, the coolest teacher ever.
That's awesome.
And it also played into, it was my best friend's dad.
Oh, okay, cool.
And so we were in the class together. His dad was my teacher. So of course the atmosphere was always inviting. That's why I look forward to it every day.
Yep.
And then aside from that, let's say I had no friends and no teacher in that class, I love just the end result of what I'm building. I literally will build something, hang it on the wall, screw it to the wall, whatever, and then I step back and just look at it. Usually take a picture and send it to like my wife saying, hey, check this out. So I like that pride of, hey, look what we've done. So that's probably what.
And I feel like cabinetry and like the millwork that you guys do has that even more so than a lot of other like construction type. I mean, obviously, like you build a house, there wasn't a house there and now there is. So like that's a huge difference. But the like fine, I don't know what it's called, like artistry, which, artisan, I guess, right? But like there's like you really are like an artist, and you get to build this really cool, beautiful thing that is like, I don't know how to describe it, but there's something really unique about like walking into a house and be like, that's some cool crown molding, or like those are some really cool custom cabinets, you know, and there's something different about it that I feel like almost anything else when you're building a home.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I have always loved the attention to the small details in the project. It's not, I've done a lot of different stuff in the construction field, and cabinets is the one that cabinets and trim are the ones that I've clinged to.
Right.
And I just feel like the detail has to be there's so much attention on it.
Yeah.
It's your kitchen cabinets that's what everybody looks at when they come to your house. So, so I want that to look good on us. I don't want somebody to come in and say, ooh, who did your cabinets,
Right.
So I don't know why. I don't know if it's the pressure we put on ourselves that I like to fight through all the hard to make it look the way it's supposed to look, but it's just enjoyable.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Again, it's just, and maybe it's cause like we fixed up, my wife and I, we bought an old home and fixed it up, and like maybe I just have an appreciation for like what it takes to do some of that stuff. Like we didn't do custom cabinets, but we installed our cabinets, and then we did trim, and my trim work is horrible. So I just,
it's great.
Oh, well, no, it's not. But I go into like people's homes where I'm like, man, like somebody like Artisan came in and like did like custom trim work in this. It's so cool. And it's just, you gain a further appreciation for it. And I think there's some artistry, there's some talent, there's an eye for that kind of stuff that's just really, really cool.
Yeah, I like reaching for the wow factor basically from the homeowner. Yeah. I love it when they say wow, or we love it, or we. One customer tells me he just actually reached out. I haven't talked to him in a few months, but he reached out and said, "Hey, how's things going?" And I said, "Great. How's your cabinets?" It's been a few months. He said, "All we get are compliments when people come over."
Oh, that's so cool.
That's what I strive for.
Oh, yeah, man. It's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, and you mentioned it briefly, but those first few sleepless nights,
right?
Diving in and kind of doing projects. You'd mentioned that you'd kind of been doing it on the side a little bit. So you had some maybe, it's probably hard with custom cabinets because it's not something you don't have a lot of repeat customers.
Right.
Because they're going to use your cabinets for 30 years and love them, right? But you had some projects in the works. You were doing it on the side a little bit. You had some connections. But when you first dive in and decide, okay, I'm doing this full time, like you mentioned, there were some nights where you're working late. And so was it just something that you just knew had to be done? Why did you dive in so heavy those first few weeks and months, I guess? Is it just kind of a mindset that you put yourself in there? Like, I think this is the only way it's going to grow?
Right. I feel like because at first we thought, I can do this by myself. I can run the shops. We bought the equipment that we bought so that I could do it by myself, and we learned quickly. And now I've got 6 guys working for me because there's no way. It's impossible. But diving into it fully, you kind of you're afraid that if you don't get this job done, the next one's going to just pass you by. So in those first few months, you're afraid to say no to anybody that comes into your shop. You want to say yes to all those jobs. And then deadlines in home building they're tight.
Yeah. So
I try to hit them, and sometimes I just had to work. I remember one night it was 4:00 in the morning. My wife's like, "Where are you at?" Like, I'll get home eventually.
Yeah.
So it's you just have to do it. I feel like especially opening. A brand new business. You want your name to be good. Yep. You don't want the first client you get to say, "Oh yeah, but they took 6 months."
Right.
So trying to do it at a good pace and
love it. Let's the cool thing I think that you mentioned there that I think is, again, super applicable to any industry. A lot of the industries that we work closely with is the customer service aspect. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that with you. You guys obviously do custom work, and so I feel like at times that comes with a lot of like custom problems. Like you just have customers that want things to look a certain way. They're paying for a custom product, so they sometimes feel like it's got to be exactly what they think all the time. And so how have you navigated some of those tough like customer service problems that I'm sure you've run into? How have you navigated them, and how have you tried to make make it be a positive customer experience? What do you try to do? Is there a tip to it? Is there a trick to it?
Oh, tips and tricks, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess my biggest thing is and it's happened a couple times, and I don't think I'll ever avoid it ever.
Oh yeah.
But I try to get there as soon as I can, and I know that there's going to be times that it gets delayed because let's say I finish your house and I'm moving on to the next one, and I've missed something or something was broken and I didn't realize it. Well, now I'm so deep into this job, I'll get back to you. I just need a couple weeks. So always communication, I think, is the biggest part.
Yeah.
That's with customer service. As long as I've learned already that they're the happiest when at least I'm communicating with them. Yeah. If I just don't say anything for 3 weeks and don't show up, they're already mad. So
love it.
So I guess being open, even if I'm behind, as long as I'm telling them, hey, give me a couple more days, they seem to be, the customer seems to be happy.
I love it.
So whether that's a tip or a trick or me, that's
No, it's a great tip. And
I'm learning as we go.
Well, it's a great tip because we harp on this all the time on this podcast. We talked about it last week with Tyler Kropp from Goodco. He is really trying to focus on the customer experience, and he works in like the mortgage world. And so mortgage and real estate, I feel like, that's like a big time customer experience problem because it takes so long to close a mortgage and like stuff like that is difficult. But we talked about like communication is a huge piece. Just what you said, like you can solve a lot of problems without even really solving the problem just by communicating, just by saying, hey, totally understand. You're right. That's broken. Or you're right. I missed that. I will be there at such and such a time and such a day. Like just communicating it. You don't necessarily have to be there instantly.
Right.
But just communicating and talking about the problem and solving it. And like little things like that can make all the difference for a customer. We talk about it all the time here at Spot On Solutions that like, yes, performance is obviously crucial. We want our clients to perform. We want them to be successful and grow their businesses. But I would say 75, 80% of the time, we can have customers be happy with us just based on the communication. The performance can be the cherry on top.
Right.
A lot of times they'll say the opposite. They'll like, oh, it's got to perform. We got to get phone calls. We got to get leads. But at the end of the day, if we're just communicating with them and helping them understand their marketing, helping them understand how to grow their business, that can be worth so much more than just like, a quality product.
Right.
And I don't know if you feel the same.
Absolutely.
Obviously you guys provide really awesome quality stuff, but like probably at the end of the day, you've got to also just communicate well to the customer about it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, construction is what it is. I mean, delays happen, if one guy is behind, well, then it just is a domino effect on everybody else. Right. So sometimes I have to reschedule my own schedule based on somebody else's performance just because, hey, they had something come up. So now I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to go install this house instead.
Yeah.
I have to communicate that. I try to be open, and I just hope everybody understands that construction just has its issues, and it always has.
Oh, yeah.
It's never going to correct itself because one thing can just lead to a weeks-long or 2 weeks-long delay.
So I think of like all the craziness that obviously COVID was a big thing, but then even like, gosh, and it's all blurred together. I don't know if it was last winter or the winter before, but there were some big freezes that like, I think it was 2 winters before, because we were working on our house and we were like, we were doing some new siding on our house. And because one like vinyl plant exploded or something or had problems in like one part of the country, there was this huge domino effect that we couldn't get our siding in for 4 months,
Yeah, a couple of years ago, materials were hard to come by and skyrocket in price and anything. So, and that causes a delay.
Yeah, causes a delay. So like you've got to be, you got to be proactive in a lot of those cases and communicate about that. Hey, you don't want the client to be the one to be like, hey, I saw this thing on the internet. Is that why you haven't gotten back to me for 3 weeks? You want to be proactive about it. Hey, this just happened. Our materials are going to be delayed or they've gone up in price. Super sorry about that. Here's the game plan to solve this problem. Like being proactive about it is also super helpful. I've found that, again, you can solve a lot of problems if you're proactive with the communication instead of reactive. Because if you're waiting for the customer, if you're waiting for that other, shoe to fall or whatever, the hammer to drop, whatever, if you're waiting for that to happen, that can cause a lot of issues.
Absolutely.
The Success Elevated podcast is brought to you by SOS Navigator. SOS Navigator is an on-demand training platform geared towards marketing, personal development, and business growth. We understand that as a business owner in the service industry, you wear a million hats. Let SOS Navigator be a simple and cost-effective way for you to continue to grow your business. Click the link in the show notes below and use code SOS Podcast to get 10% off your next on-demand training course.
Side notes to all this, because there's a couple things that I want to follow up on, but have you guys, I know you've only been in business for you're coming up on a year. Have you guys still kind of experienced some of the fallout from like COVID and material pricing and stuff like that? Have you still kind of experiencing some of that a few years later?
No, honestly, now it's almost back to where it was, at least in the cabinet world. I don't know about other industries, but for us, I can get stuff most of the time. Every now and then I get something on back order, but for the most part, it's readily available.
Cool. That was just a little side question I had, because it feels like there are still industries that like to throw out COVID as an excuse. And I don't, maybe it's a good excuse, but I feel like there are still industries that are like, oh yeah, since this thing that happened 4 years ago, we're still struggling. It's like, okay, can we there's got to be some way to correct this. Yeah. Can we move on a little bit? So, let's talk about growth.
Okay.
First year of business. I'd love to hear, did you have any specific goals when you first started? Like, you want to do X amount of projects, you want to do X amount of revenue. What were kind of your initial goals, and what are your goals, now looking into the future?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, when we first got rolling, without being too specific on like an exact number, we did have a goal of, hey, we want to do at least 2 houses a month. That was kind of our thing we were reaching for. Now it's turning into, we're like doing 3 to 4 jobs at a time, whether that's in a month or a rolling month, we're doing more than 2. So it's good. So the growth happened quickly, which was awesome for us. It was stressful too. That's when I started learning that I needed help. Yeah, I needed a lot of help in there. So that I guess the long-term goal.
Yeah.
I don't even have one right now, honestly. Yeah. Just I'm liking the speed we're going.
Cool.
I'd like to get my feet underneath me a little bit more, but I feel really comfortable where we're at right now. I don't see dreams of having a 100-man shop. I don't even think I would like to be there. That just seems like a headache.
Yeah.
So I like our
more trouble than it's worth.
Right. So I like our size. I like our location. There's not much that I would change about it right now.
That's so cool.
But like I said, we're not quite to a year. Yeah. So maybe in a couple of years, my mind will change. But right now, pretty happy with where we're at.
It's cool that you noticed that growth so quickly. Another common theme that we've had on our podcast that everybody talks about when they're growing a small business is they're like, almost instantaneously, when I decided to delegate some portion of my role to somebody else, generally in the form of hiring somebody, almost immediately you see business growth.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's happened for you guys as well, is like almost immediately when you got to a point where you're like, I have got to get some people in here helping me. You guys saw some pretty quick growth, which is cool. And you've gotten to a point now that you're like, we could sustain this. It's still crazy. It's still busy, but we could sustain this moving forward.
Absolutely.
Which is awesome. And it's, again, a common theme that we've seen. Like, if you want to grow your business, you got to get some people in there to help. You've got to take something off your plate. You've got to be able to, delegate some of those responsibilities to other people.
You do.
So, nothing really big coming down the line as far as a goal. Do you have any thoughts on, someday trying to sell the business? Obviously you're just kind of getting started into this thing. Is there any kind of long-term thought of like, maybe you'll expand to offer more services, or what do you kind of think? Anything with regards to that?
Yeah, we've definitely talked about doing other things outside of that, or, with the shop as the hub of a couple different things. Long-term, as far as where I see myself though, I'm going to be, this is a lifer thing.
That's cool.
I've got boys that are interested in this. So whether they come in after me and run, I don't know how that's all going to play out. Yeah. But for now, I have no plans of basically going anywhere. So
that's awesome.
I want to see this through as my last. This is my last job.
Oh, that's so cool, man.
I don't want to go do anything else.
Well, and I love it because that feels, and that seems totally genuine, man. Because I think that's so cool, and I think, again, it's lost in a lot of the world. I think there are some people that start businesses to make $1, and they don't necessarily care as much about how it happens. But I love that you're like, no, this is something I genuinely like enjoy.
Right.
And, I don't want to speak out of turn, but if you were to retire one day, you'd probably still do this in your free time.
I honestly would
do woodworking and do trim work, do like cool millwork and cabinetry. Like, you would probably still enjoy doing that, which I think is just, it's a testament to who you are, and it's a testament to like this cool, niche that you found, which is really awesome. Kenny, I want to close up by asking the same 3 questions we ask everybody. This has been super cool to sit here and chat with you for a few minutes, and I know it's been really informative for our audience. But I'd like to close up, same 3 questions we ask all of our guests. Okay. So first question, we talked a little before we were recording about asking you favorite book or podcast, and you were like, can I talk more about maybe some music? Because that's more what you lean into.
Right.
So what's your favorite type of music? Do you have something, do you like to like, do you listen to calm down, to take your mind off things? What are you listening to music for?
So, I mean, for the most part, I listen to everything, but I guess my I'm driving home music.
Yeah.
Right now, it's Chris Stapleton. He's my guy.
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah. I can't seem to turn that off. So
that's cool.
But that's how I wind down on the drive home.
That's cool. Well, that leads perfectly into question number 2, which is how do you recharge at the end of a long day? Sounds like an ideal end to a long day is you're listening to Chris Stapleton on the way home.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's part of it. But what else do you do to kind of relax, recharge your batteries?
Just getting home.
Yeah.
I just got to get home. I got to get to my wife. I got to get to my kids.
That's cool.
We're either playing like my kids are huge into baseball, softball. So we're either doing that or we're just kind of just chilling. Yeah. So that's I just have to get home. That's awesome. That's what gets me there.
It's so funny. We've interviewed some really we've interviewed people that own small businesses. We've interviewed people that own really large businesses or presidents of large companies. Mm-hmm. And almost all of them in some way, shape, or form have mentioned family, which I think is so cool that and again, is lost in the modern day of grind, hustle, don't stop working, get up earlier, stay later. I feel like there's a portion of that. It's I've got to go home and spend time with my family. Yeah. That's how I, and it's for a lot of people, it's their why. I'm doing this for them. Yeah. So why would I not spend time with them at the end of the day?
Right. So, and like I said, the first part of this year, it was hard on them, but it's starting because I was gone late every night. Now it's getting to the point where I'm getting home at a more stable time.
A decent hour. Yeah. Not at 4 a.m.
Right.
It's hard to see your kids when you're getting home.
Exactly.
Oh, hey, you're going to school in a couple hours.
Right. Yeah. So it's getting a lot better. So.
Cool. That's awesome. Last question. Okay. Which again, feel free to take it whatever direction you want. You could take it to, the beginning of your career with Artisan, which is, just a year ago, or if you want to go to your start of your career working for the government or high school, whatever. If you could rewind to an earlier time of your life and tell younger Kenney one thing, what would that one thing be?
Honestly, I wish I would have planned things a little differently.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wish I would have looked into opportunities more. Yeah. Rather than just twiddling my thumbs for the last decade, wondering what I could do, waiting for opportunities to come. I wish I would have went out and looked harder for them.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, man, it's better late than never.
Right.
Better late than never.
I'm glad I'm doing it now.
But. Yeah. It's so cool. There's that funny common saying. It's the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. Right. But the second best time is today. Yeah. And you had your today last year and you're now kind of diving into it. So kudos to you, man. Where if people are interested, obviously you guys work right here in Southeast Idaho, but if people are interested in learning a little bit about you guys, or maybe having you come do a custom job for them, where can they find out a little bit more about you guys?
We've got, our own website. I've got social media on, a few different platforms. So, and then, or just come to Blackfoot, come see us. So we reach out all over this valley. So far we've done Soda, Grace, and then up to Rexburg. Cool. So even over in American Falls. So we'll reach out and come find you if you need us to.
Artisan Cabinetry and Millwork. Yep. Kenney Gardner, thanks again for coming on the podcast,
Absolutely.
Man. Really appreciate it. We'll probably have you on again in the future just because you're so close. We'll come over and harass you. Maybe we'll do like a video podcast where you give us a tour of the shop.
That'd be cool.
That would be. I don't know if anybody else would listen to that podcast, but I would enjoy it because I think what you guys are doing over there is so cool. So, anyways, thanks, Kenney.
Okay. Yep.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.